Pete Francis with Blues Rock Review. Joining me today is Alastair Greene, who has a new album coming out, The New World Blues, on October 23rd. Alastair, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so new album coming out. It's produced by Tab Benoit. How did you get involved with Tab?
That's a good story, and it's a good question. For a few years, I was going out to the big blues bender in Las Vegas, I'd done some playing with my band, and I'd been hired to kind of be part of the Bender Brass, which is the backup band that backs up a bunch of musicians for the festival. And I've met Tab. He's been there every year, and we kind of hit it off early on. He's a really funny guy, and I try to keep humor as part of my arsenal. So we hit it off, and at the time I was playing guitar with Alan Parsons, and it turned out he's a fan of a lot of 70s rock music and stuff. So we both kind of bonded over that. And, and I knew he'd started a record label and had started recording artists. And I believe it was like 2 years ago. My concept of time's getting a little weird, but 2 years ago, I kept going and seeing him at the Bender and whatnot. And we kind of developed this friendship. And he told me 2 years ago, it's 2020 now, so 2018, I guess. He's like, hey, man, I started a record label, and I'm, producing bands and whatnot and artists, I guess you could say. And would you be interested in doing a record? And at the time, I had literally just signed on to play guitar with Sugar Ray Rayford. And I knew I was going to do that for at least a year, which ended up being a year that I played with Sugar Ray. So I said, yeah, man, I would love to make a record. I've got this commitment to Sugar Ray, but if we can find a time to get together and do it, I'd love to do it. And so we found, a couple gaps in the schedule with Sugar Ray, and I went to Tab's place and made a record, and here we are.
Yeah, and this album is a more stripped down blues approach. Was that an intentional thing, or did that just sort of happen organically?
Kind of both. I knew going in that I wanted to, make a blues record that was more stripped down. And I talked to Tab kind of about what he likes to do, his approach in the studio. So I had that in my head going in. He likes to record as much live as possible. And knowing that, he is, he's got some deep blues roots, and it was going to be him playing drums and his bass player, Corey, playing bass. And I knew that we were going to go in and it was going to be really off the cuff, and it was going to really be dependent on the feels of the songs, really getting the vibes and the feels. So I want to say I'd probably written 75% of the songs that ended up on the record just to have something to play. But I also wanted to be, open to their grooves and ideas and interpretations. But knowing that it was going to be stripped down, it was going to be mostly live, and that I was going to be playing with a couple guys that really had a flavor to how they played, I knew it was going to be a blues record. And I was, able to slip in some blues rock, and there's some, rock, and there's some stuff on the record that's kind of outside of my wheelhouse of things that I've done in the past. But yeah, man, I'm stoked. I really wanted to kind of make a very, blues oriented recording, in comparison to, my last studio record, which Dream Train, which was for all intents and purposes a classic rock record with some blues on it. So
yeah, and obviously this is a really interesting time for musicians to be putting out music.
Yeah,
with everything that's been going on. So how does that change kind of the promotional aspect of putting out an album, knowing that you can't really go out and do a full tour?
Yeah, well, that's another great question. I mean, one of the reasons that I was really enthusiastic and still enthusiastic about doing a record with Tab for his label is he takes his artists out on tour. And so, it's called, he'll bring an artist out and they'll call it the Whiskey Bayou Review, or they'll have a couple artists, and he'll play drums and Corey will play bass with the artist, whether, it's me or Eric Johansson or JP Soares. So that was very appealing to me. As part of like, wow, I mean, this is an amazing opportunity to go and play some shows and go on the road and play to Tab's audience with Tab in the band. I mean, it's a win-win-win. So, now that obviously there's not going to be much in the way of gigs, we're just going to have to get creative, and obviously social media, doing some streaming things, doing what we can to promote, videos, all that stuff. And, I was pretty, I want to say adamant about getting the record out and just doing it. It's just like, I think that people want to hear new music, and there's not a ton of new music, coming out right this second. And this record had, been in the can, and it's like, I think that it'd be a good time just to get it out and give some people something new and something positive.
Yeah, talking about touring, what are your thoughts on online shows?
Well, I think it's, I did a handful of these streaming things kind of early on at the outset. I think it's good. I think it's good for the people that are really, hungry for music, for live music, because, there's a lot of people out there that are bona fide live music fans. And so for them, I think it's important. I think it's important for the audience to get that, to be able to see, their favorite bands, their favorite artists. And it's important for the artists to stay connected to their fans. And, especially, if you're doing a live thing on Facebook or something like that, you can in real time interact with your listeners and your fans. There's a chat going, and people are asking questions. So in some ways, you're able to do things that you wouldn't necessarily do at a live show, like answer questions and maybe take requests and get into some other stuff. So yeah, I think, it's not ideal, and I think it'll probably continue. Regardless of what happens in the future. And I think some artists are really good at presenting something quality that sounds and looks good. And I think a lot of the fans are appreciative of that.
Yeah, as a music consumer, does it make a big difference to you if the album or the live stream is coming across with professional sound, or if it's just a cell phone? Does that make any difference to you?
To me, a little bit. I'm not like a total audiophile. And I actually, in the beginning, I was a little self-conscious about some of my live streams because they didn't sound and look good. I, invested in a camera that I'm looking at you with right now, and it's got a microphone. And there's, depending upon the platform that you use for streaming, there's, positives and negatives and little boxes to check to make sure the audio sounds good. And I know some artists have really gone out of the way to, set up microphones and little mixers and sub mixes and all that. But at the core of it, especially for blues, a lot of those great records weren't recorded all that amazing. So if I'm going to see someone performing blues, it's really more about the feeling and whatnot than it's going to be about the audio visual experience. So it's a little bit of each. Like, I like to see, high quality stuff, but I think for certain types of music and certain artists, it's not going to matter because their message is going to get across kind of regardless of what kind of equipment they have.
Yeah, with so many bands not on the road, able to tour, what do you think is the biggest positive that can come out of this situation?
I think a lot of good songs are going to get written and are getting written right now. There's obviously a lot of time for reflection and for making music, and for artists to really kind of rediscover themselves, rediscover what message, or discover the message they want to get across to their audience. And so I think musically we're going to see, and we're already seeing, a lot of creativity, a lot of collaborations, a lot of musicians are collaborating that you wouldn't normally see, whether it's those, videos where they record a cover or whatever, and they do that, video thing. Or speaking for myself, I've been, playing on a bunch of people's records and stuff, which is great because I can do that here in my little home studio. So those are definitely positives. And I think in a time like this, we really need to grab on to the positives and keep positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you think musicians go from here if there isn't full on touring in 2021?
Well, I don't know. I can guess, I can hope. But, it remains to be seen what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. I'm hopeful that, people will be able to continue to, be full-time musicians when and if this ends. We're going to be seeing a lot of people, getting what's the term, the side hustle. Musicians already, you got a side hustle somewhere, whether it's, teaching guitar lessons or playing sessions or, whatever it is. But, everyone's going to really have to get that going, and hopefully that we'll all be able to get out and play. It's a really, sad and anxious time for musicians, especially when you start thinking about the venues and all the other, quote unquote jobs that surround the music business, especially on, some of the bigger levels, all the guys that work at the venues and the crews, and the agents and the people that work for the agents and all that stuff. There's so many jobs, wrapped up in all of this. So, I'm really hoping that, people are able to pull through, and that some of these venues are going to be able to stay open or come back in some way, shape, or form. So again, it's important to stay positive and to be hopeful, and to do what we can to bring attention to a lot of these challenges and issues, so that we're able to keep music going, live music going.
Yeah, in the blues rock genre, so many of the artists who play this music, they're going out to those clubs, those small clubs, and playing. Mm-hmm. How many of those places do you think are going to be realistically around by the time people can go out and full on tour again?
I don't know. I've been reading and seeing about some venues that have closed recently, that are especially in the blues and the blues rock circuit. There's some that are keeping it going, and there's some, if it's, it's interesting because, some of the venues that maybe do have an outdoor patio and serve food, are able to maybe scrape by a little bit by doing things other than having the live music right now. And so, but yeah, it's hard to support a place without that it's a strictly a live music venue if they're not having any music, excuse me. And so I don't know, man. I'm like I said, I'm trying to stay positive and trying to stay hopeful, but the reality is there's probably going to be, some big gaps in the routing, and where some of the venues that have to shut down.
Yeah. So today there's so many different ways to consume music, whether it's streaming with Spotify or YouTube, or, some people are still listening to CDs or vinyl. How do you consume music?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. I've been actually listening to a lot of vinyl since all of this happened. I've always been a big vinyl nut, and CDs, and tapes. I've still got cassette tapes. I don't have any 8-tracks, but still have cassette tapes. But I like CDs and I like vinyl. Vinyl to me, there's a sonic thing, but there's also just that music nerd part of it. I've got my record player right here. I'm listening to UFO.
Nice.
And, you can go on the back, and there's just all the credits and who wrote what and who played on what and who produced it and all that kind of stuff. And there's another UFO record, so, but, that to me is important. It's important for that kind of stuff, just as a music nerd and maybe a bit of a musicologist or something. But that's how I like to consume music. I like, I do some stuff online. I'll go to YouTube and watch, videos and stuff. If I'm teaching and I need to get access to a song, if it's not in my iTunes, I'll go to YouTube or Spotify to find it. I'm not, the huge streaming fan, of course, for obvious reasons, just, as far as just music being free and whatnot. I don't feel bad using Spotify occasionally, because I've spent thousands of dollars on CDs and vinyl, and most of the stuff I find on Spotify I might have, on a CD somewhere. But I think it's important for physical media to still be something that is valued and listened to.
Have you found yourself having more time now to actually kind of dive in and listen to music? Because a lot of times I talk to artists, and when they're out on the road touring, I'll ask them, what have you been listening to? And they'll say, you know what, I really just haven't had a whole lot of time to dig into things. Do you feel like now you've had more time to kind of consume music as a fan?
Absolutely. Well, most of the listening that I would used to do was when I was, driving or flying or whatever. I would listen to music, but now part of what's helping me just kind of deal and get through all of this is having that time to get excited about listening to music, and whether it's, discovering something new, or I've been actually spending a lot of time just going through what I already own and rediscovering, CDs that I bought maybe through my collection and haven't listened to, or going back through my vinyl, or rediscovering a band that I loved and going, oh man, I've got some gaps in that, in my catalog of whatever band, and, getting some of that stuff. So yeah, I've been listening to a lot of music, and just having that kind of be part of my day, just to make, music makes us happy. What can you say? So it's been a positive thing in that regard for me.
Yeah. Anything in particular that has caught your attention?
Well, what's kind of happened with me is, there's a couple things that happen for me is if a musician passes that I was a fan of, I tend to go, and one of the reasons I've got all that UFO over there on the turntables, Pete Way passed away recently. Back in March when Neil Peart passed away, I went on a huge Rush listening binge, because I was a fan, but I, wanted to go back and really absorb and reconnect with that music. And then I've been reconnecting with the stuff that really made me want to play guitar in the first place, and just got me excited about playing music. And I, it's no secret, I grew up a hard rock kid. So, I've been listening to a lot of my old, early 80s, hard rock and metal records, and just kind of keeping that part of me, staying connected to the excitement of music and wanting to play guitar. And then also just some of the stuff that initially got me really excited about blues and blues rock. Just 2 days ago was the 30th anniversary of Stevie Ray Vaughan passing. And so, he was a huge light bulb moment for me, along with the Allman Brothers Band and B.B. King and Buddy Guy. And so staying connected with all the things that have gotten me, excited about making music, playing guitar, writing songs, has just, that's just been what I've been up to for the last 5 months or whatever it's been now.
Yeah. Going back to the new album, The New World Blues, where does that title come from?
It was one of the songs that I'd written for the record. And, I wrote the majority of the songs early 2019. I had a break in the Sugar Ray schedule, and I knew I was going to be going into the studio with Tab in the summer. And so I wrote the record, most of the record. And that was one of the songs that I wrote, that I brought in. And it was because, and again, if, I'm sure you've read some of the one sheet and some of the literature that you've been sent for the interview, but, I don't claim to be a fortune teller by any means, but, everything that I wrote about then has almost become more relevant now with just what's going on in the world, what's going on in this country. And so that's kind of where my head was at, even when I was writing the record. It was just like, wow, man, the world is crazy right now. And we have to be strong. We have to stick together. We have to, stay positive. We have to try and do the right things. And so The New World Blues was one of the songs that kind of came out of that writing spree that I had.
Yeah, The New World Blues coming out October 23rd. Alastair, anything you want to add before we let you go?
No, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you, supporting this music. I think it's important, for blues rock and for blues fans. And I think, blues rock, if it's done well, points the way back to the originators of this music. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind at this time. All the the Black musicians that came and invented this music, this is part of what is so important with continuing this form of music, is I think it points the way back to the originators. And I hope people buy the record, and you can find it on my website at alastairgreene.com, and find me on all the social channels and whatnot, and subscribe to the Blues Rock Review email list.
Love that.
All that stuff. Do all the stuff.
All right, Alastair, thanks a lot for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.